My name is Logan Manford, founder of BLōFISH Clothing. We are a clothing company known not only for our amazing clothing, but also for our even more amazing message, all for all. This is not your normal podcast. No celebrities, sports, or money. This podcast, the Speakeasy, has been created for the other stories, the ones you may not want to hear. These words are the stories of your neighbors, of the people you pass every day on the street, from the homeless to sexual assault survivors, to those being disowned for their sexuality. It is the sound of our community, and we hope you listen with open ears and an open heart. Hey friends, welcome back to the BLōFISH Speakeasy. We've had a little bit of a break. Good things have been happening with BLōFISH. Lots of new products. We actually had a pop-up store back home in the city of Louisville, Kentucky. We are hoping to replicate that model and do it in some bigger cities, so look out for us. Our Instagram's been a little down lately as well, just because honestly we were selling too much stuff and couldn't keep up with it. So it's a good problem to have, but get ready and look out for us with the spring line. It shouldn't stop the podcast though. We've got some awesome guests lined up. Today we've got our friend Jesse. Jesse's done some modeling for us. He's helped us out at the store a couple times. Jesse's got a really interesting story that I think a lot of you are going to be able to relate to. Hey Jesse, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So
Jesse, like I said, has got an interesting story. He can go ahead. So what's your background a little bit like?
Okay, so quick background. I am from Alabama, from Tuscaloosa.
Down south.
Roll Tide, yes. My parents divorced when I was like 2, going upon 3. So I never actually remember them being together. Both of my parents, though, are either military or married to a military person. And so I've moved around a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
I've lived in Germany, Paris, Alabama, New Jersey, Virginia. Like, I lived in a lot of places.
That's crazy. Yeah, Paris to Alabama, that's had to be crazy.
Oh, yeah. I don't actually remember living overseas. That was when I was, like, very, very young.
Yeah.
But my mom, she said that Paris is one of her favorite places. She said if her parents weren't living, she said she would definitely move back.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up in Louisville, I guess? So we'll skip a little bit, but now you're here in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
You go to school here at
Yes.
Louisville, right?
I go to U of L. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Graduating.
Hopefully soon.
One day.
It's awesome. It's why we love having Jesse around. His personality is just awesome. You can't hang out with him without smiling. It's kind of cool. Obviously, your family dynamics have been a little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 5 half-sisters. I have no full-blooded siblings. No, I used to have 1 stepbrother and 1 stepsister, but now it's just 5 half-sisters and about to be 4 more stepsisters. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Fun. So when did you finally get settled in Alabama, I guess? Is that where you grew up at?
Yes. So that was kind of like back and forth. When I was in middle school, my mom and I were living in New Jersey with her then husband and his kids, and they were married, of course, but yeah, we were living there, and I hated it. It's funny now because I love New York and things, but I hated it then because I was away from my family and everything I knew. So I moved back to Alabama with my grandparents. And so then once my mom got divorced, she moved back to Alabama. So I went to high school there.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. We don't want to fast forward too much through your growing up and stuff like that, but go ahead and talk a little bit about, like, not even what BLōFISH means to you, but kind of like what our message means to you and why it's kind of so important. I know this is like the hard part to talk about, but start however you want to. I guess that's the easy way to come about it, like all for all and what it means.
So for me, it's just a really good message because I myself was sexually assaulted twice, actually. I didn't know the first time happened until I got to be older. It was one of those things where the counselor said that I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind, and it didn't come out until I was older. So I guess I'll start with the second time because that leads into the first time.
Yeah.
The second time happened when I was 13. Because my parents were divorced, they had shared custody. And so I used to spend the summers with him and the school years with my mom and the holidays.
Where was he at then?
In Maryland at the
Maryland?
time. Mm-hmm.
So you'd go from
Alabama to Maryland. Yes. Mm-hmm. He's actually here now, but he was in Maryland then. And so he put me in this camp. It was like at a college. I'm not going to say the college name, but it was at a college. And like it was just a day camp. It wasn't like overnight. Well, it was like we were going to school. they would like take us to like different classes, but they would have a counselor who was only like 18, 17.
Gosh, like a lot of camps do. Yeah.
To take
18
us,
or 17. Yeah, that's crazy.
Who would take us to different classes, but we had an actual instructor who was an actual adult. Well, I got close to our particular counselor, and we became friends, and I got so close to him mainly because he lived across the street from where my dad lived. So he would take me home on days my dad would be like late, or we would like hang out, and it was cool because I'm a very, like you said, I'm a very social person. So I really hated like being there because I didn't know anybody. And so
that's one thing I wanted to ask you. Have you always been this outgoing and like?
I've had to be.
It's so cool though.
I actually had, my mom told me when I was younger, she said, you only ever got in trouble for one thing in school, and that was talking. All the time.
That's fun. If y'all don't know, you need to look up Jesse on Insta. We'll put all that stuff on there, but I mean, you can just look at it. Like his smile just lights up a room. And it's kind of cool. Anyways, not to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Go back. He's taking you back and forth to school. And
He would take me back and forth to the camp, and we would hang out outside of that. And he was gay. I didn't know that though. We never really talked about it, which I don't care. But he just never told me. And so what happened was on the last day of the camp, I had told my dad that morning he is going to take me and he's also going to bring me home. My dad was like, okay, that's fine. That means I don't have to get off of work early. And so that day, I had brought a camera. I was like at the other middle school. I had my big camera that I had the little wrist thing. And so I was taking pictures of everybody and stuff like that. And so he told me we were getting ready to leave. And he told me we got in his car, and he actually had my camera on him, but he had like took it without me knowing. But what he said was, "Oh, you left your camera. I think you left your camera in the classroom." I said, "Oh, okay." So we went back from his car, and this was like at the end of the day. Everybody had left.
Yeah, last day of camp too. Yeah.
We got in the room, and he was just like, "I just want to tell you I really like you." I said, okay, me being 13, I wasn't thinking, you like me in that way. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, we're friends. Yeah, cool. So I'm still looking around for my camera. Yeah. Well, I turn around, and he's, like, standing right up on me. And I was just like, what are you doing? And, like, he forced me to, like, kiss him. And I was just like, listen. And then he pulled his pants down. And so I was just like, whoa. Yeah. And so it was just this big struggle. And he forced me to perform oral sex. After that, like, I was crying and stuff like that. And we left, and he took me home, and I went home, and I locked myself in my room. And I just remember thinking, I just wanted to go home. I just wanted to be near my mom. My mom's side of the family at least, is super, super close. Mm-hmm. Most of us lived in the same neighborhood. Yeah. And I just remember thinking to myself, I just wanted to be around my Nana. Yeah. I just didn't want to be there anymore. Camp worked in like thirds. It would be like, 2 weeks on, and then like 2 weeks off, and then like 2 weeks on. And so I remember telling my dad, I did not want to go back. And he was like, okay. I mean, I don't care. He was just like, this is just something for you to do. And so I thought by not going back that that problem would go away. Well, he called me constantly until I got a different number.
So let's be like, you didn't tell your dad anything after? You just kind of didn't tell anybody?
I did not tell anyone.
Which everybody we've had on here, and anybody that we've talked to, I mean, it's the same thing. It's that, I mean, I can't describe the feeling. What is it like? Is it just like shut down, or is it like...
That's pretty much what I did. I just shut down completely. I stopped doing the things that I had normally liked to do. I have nephews who are my age, and we used to play basketball and play outside and stuff all the time. And so when it happened, I didn't want to be around anyone. For a couple weeks afterwards, I just didn't want to be bothered. And then I guess what scared me even more is that afterwards, he would ride past my house. I would see him, and he would ride past my house. There was one time, me and my nephew rode our bikes up to the Target, and he, like, grabbed me. He saw me at the Target, and he, like, grabbed me while we were in Target.
Holy cow.
And he was, like, berating me in Target, and my nephew...
How old was your nephew?
He's only a year younger than I am. And so he ran up, and he was like, what's going on? And the dude ran off. And so it was just...
crazy.
It was just bad. And I called my mom. I didn't tell her, but I called her and I told her I wanted to come home early. And she was fine with that. I'm her only child, so she wanted me home anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's, a lot of these stories we hear, it's from people who are in, like, positions not of, like, I guess of authority kind of, that are, like, supposed to be people's superiors or something like that who this happens to. And the thing is, it's tough to speak up against these people because they're supposed to be the ones, like, watching you and, like, I don't know, he was in charge of the, like, your guardian, I guess, for that time at the camp. Like, it's really hard to even, I don't know, it's hard to comprehend, I guess.
It was a really lonely feeling. And afterwards, I blamed myself. I went into this super hyper masculine mode where it was like I had to prove to everyone that I wasn't gay. And the crazy thing was, no one knew I was home. I didn't tell anyone until I got to be 15. That's when I finally told my older sister. I told her.
So you're in high school at the time?
Yes.
In Alabama?
Yes.
Okay.
But I had came up once again to Maryland for the summer, and me and my sister one night. Well, yeah, my sister. One night we were having a discussion, and I told her about it. I just felt like I think I had seen something online where it was talking about like, oh, telling people about these things will help free you and things. And so when I told her, she was sympathetic, but I could tell something was wrong. It wasn't like she felt bad about it. Yeah. But she just, I don't know, she's just very weird about it. And mind you, me and my sister are not like close in age, and we do not see each other very often.
So she's older?
Very much older. She's about, I think we're 18 years apart.
Gotcha.
And so she kind of encouraged me not to tell anyone else. And so I was like, okay. Yeah, and that just made me, and then she kind of
she's that much older than you. Like, what are you going to think? I mean, like...
Right. Well, later on is when I figured out what the issue was. And the issue was, I got to college and went through my whole high school career, and basically, I slept around. Yeah. I let people use me, and I acted out sexually. I acted out physically. I would fight at the drop of a hat, and I was a terror. Like I apologize to my mom all the time now because I'm like, every gray hair you have in your head is because of me, and I know it.
So when you told your sister, did she just don't say anything, and then?
Yeah, she got quiet for a minute, and then she looked at me and she said, "Have you told anybody else?" I said, "No, you're the first person I told." She said, "I wouldn't tell anyone else." Wow. And I was just looking at her like, is that it? And she's just like, well, I'm sorry.
And we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but for those of you who have had this happen to him at a younger age, or even, I mean, this story is from when you were 13, maybe a little bit older. Don't let it discourage you, even from if you tell one person and they get the same reaction. Keep speaking up about it, because there's other people out there who will listen to you, who will be there for you, and it's tough, and it's not just her fault. Other people have had things happen to them too, and been in certain situations to where they might not know any better, and they think that they're doing the right thing for you, when in turn, really, it's probably not. So just everyone out there, just, I don't know, remember your story is your story, and it's not something that you want to hold in. It's something that you want to probably get out there. And seek professional help, obviously. Family's family, but oftentimes they're might not be the best people to talk about something. So
definitely not. Yeah. And it really created a divide in my dad's side of the family, mainly because of the events that happened afterwards, and we weren't even that close. So to put a divide from where it was, that's why we don't speak now.
Did your sister say something to?
Well, what she did, I told her I wanted to say something to my father, and she didn't get irate, but she got upset about me wanting to talk to him, and I was like, what is your problem? This is something that happened to me. Yeah. And so I'll never forget, the day after we had this conversation, she was leaving, and I was just waking up, but I could hear them arguing outside, her and my father. And she was leaving. She had packed up because my nephew, her son, had spent the night And her husband, who is her husband now, had also spent the night. Mind you, me and him didn't really talk. I always felt like he acted weird against me for some reason.
Yeah.
So they left, and she was arguing with my dad the next day, and she was just like, I just don't want my children around Jay, and I just feel like he's this, he's that.
So
and
you heard all this.
And she told my father then that she thought I was gay, and she felt like I was a bad influence, and she was scared about what would happen to her children and all these other things. And I was just... And that made me feel obviously even worse because I had already blamed myself.
Yeah.
And so from that, like, it was like a switch went off. It was like I had lived my life up until that point trying to prove, quote unquote, that I wasn't gay.
Yep.
Then it went to a switch up. Well, maybe I am,
Yeah.
if this is what's going on. And so then 2 summers later, my dad moved here to Kentucky. And I came out here to visit him. And he had this thing where he got all my sisters and things together.
Yeah.
He wanted all his family together, so we got together. Well, while there, I told my sister, I talked to her again, because I was thinking maybe that time there was just something wrong with her. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I told her again. I said, I'm going to talk to Daddy. I said, I need to get this off my chest. Because at that point in time, I had finally told my mom. And
you're what, 17?
Yes.
Just in college, is that what you're saying?
No.
Not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
This is still in high school. I had finally told my mom, and that only came out because of an argument.
Oh, no.
But, and so I felt like I needed to tell him, especially since it happened under his roof.
Yeah.
Well, she said, okay, and left it at that. So I left, and I get a call because I was going to do it another day.
Yeah.
I get a call from my father, and he was like, you need to come home right now. I said, okay. And so I get back to the house. And what Nikki did to divert away from what I was going to tell my father was she said, I sexually molested my nephew, her son.
This is your sister?
Yes.
Okay. The same one you told about all this stuff.
And I don't think there has ever been anything in this world that has hurt me as much as that. Because if there's anything anyone knows about me, it's that I love my family to death.
Yeah.
And so I was extremely hurt and upset, and I couldn't understand why she would say something like that. And then what made it even worse was my other nephew, who's not her son, but my other sister's son, said that never happened. Like of course my father asked them and asked different people in the house.
Confronting everybody.
Right, he was confronting everybody. Yeah. And everybody else was like, what is she talking about? Yeah. And so she made a big scene again and was like, we're leaving. And took her son, and her husband. So I called my mom, and my mom flew me out the next day. My mom was like, you're not sitting around dealing with that. You're coming home. Yeah. And so once I got to college, that happened. I did not speak to them. Nikki, I have not actually seen her since that happened. My dad, we didn't speak until I graduated high school. Because I felt like, and I told him, I said, I felt like this was your fault. This was halfway your fault. Because Nikki has said some pretty hurtful things about me and to me in the past, and my dad has never said anything. And so she only felt like that was okay because you allowed her to say other crazy things about
Enabled
me.
her, basically.
And so when I graduated high school, I got to college, and I wilded out. And I remember I have a really, really good friend. Her name is Nina. And she kept telling me, because I was drinking, I was smoking, I was having sex like somebody had lost their mind. and I mean anyone who was willing. Like, it was just ridiculous. And I remember my friend Nina telling me, she was like, Jesse, I think this is going beyond you just having a good time. She's like, I think you're trying to cover something up. I said, oh no, I'm not trying to cover anything up. I'm just chilling. I'm just having fun. Yeah. So it took one instance where I almost actually died. Me and my friends, we went out one night, and my friends to this day think I was drugged because we had went out to this party. And I only remember about 15 or 20 minutes of the actual party. Because we got there, we started drinking, and all of a sudden, everything went black. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in a hospital bed, not chained, but handcuffed to the bed.
Holy cow.
And I'm looking around, and I'm like, what is going on? And a police officer comes into where I'm laying, and he's like, you're handcuffed to the bed because you are being charged. We just needed to wait until the alcohol was out of your system. And then they read me my Miranda rights. And
Holy
then
cow.
got me up and took me to jail.
That's wild.
Yes. Apparently there was a whole lot of stuff that happened that night. But
like damage to property and stuff like that.
damage of property, assault. That's what I was arrested for. Assault and battery, and then the damage of property was added on to it.
Shit.
I was in school at the time. I was at Eastern Kentucky, and I wasn't at U of L yet. And I got out of, by the grace of God and by the skin of my teeth, I got out of that whole situation.
Wow.
I had to do community service, but I was in a lot of trouble with my school because it was at the school.
Yeah.
And so I had to go to a counselor. I had to go to an alcohol abuse counselor, and what other counselor? There was another counselor I had to go to. I just can't remember what it was. So through talking with that counselor, I figured out that one of the reasons my sister doesn't want like me around her or her son and things like that is because her husband actually sexually assaulted me when I was younger. I figured it had to have happened around 7 or 8 years old.
Holy cow.
And I asked my father about it. And he was like, well, I was told some things, but his rationale for it was he didn't actually believe that that's what happened. Because apparently I told my other nephew about it, the one who's only a year younger than me. That's not Nikki's son. But
when you were younger, you said it.
Apparently I told him, and he told my dad. And my dad was like, well, he lies a lot, so I wasn't exactly sure that that's what happened. And so I was like, okay. Through those counselors, I kind of pieced together what was actually going on with me and everything else, because I was a wreck. Anybody who's listening who knew me at that time, I apologize because I was a wreck.
That's wild. So I guess the counselor just helped you like go back and just like...
Yes. Because one of the questions she had asked me was something about my childhood, and I really couldn't tell her. And she was like, why can't you tell me? She was like, most people are able to recall childhood memories, and if they're not, it's because they blocked it out for some type of reason.
Yeah.
And it had something to do with my dad, and my rationale was, well, he wasn't around when I was younger.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. It wasn't until I got to be about 7 that I knew who he actually even was. And so she made me go all the way back, as far back in my memory as possible.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was able to recall.
Wild. I guess your dad just denied it even after you said something, or?
Well, his thing was... He is very old school, so counseling for him is like, what's the point? And so when I talked to him about this, his thing was, well, maybe somebody's putting something in your head that didn't actually happen. And my thing was, do you know what I've been through over the last 2 years, the last couple years of my life? I highly doubt that I was just out here doing this for no reason.
Yeah.
And so... because my counselor helped me realize that is what I used as coping mechanism.
That's what's built up inside of you, and it's just there.
And it was really hard because at the time, I really hated myself. I really did not like when I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw.
There was almost like a piece of you, like, that you were denying, though. I mean, not that it was like a good piece, but almost like a part of your, like, being that was like you had to block out of your mind, like
exactly. And at the time growing up, like I said, my mom was remarried as well. She was married at that point in time to a terrible man. He was awful to her, he was awful to me. He was awful to his own kids. And so my mom, it was like at the time she really needed me to be there to be like, I guess, her calm during the storm, because she was going through it with him. And so there was really nobody other than my grandmother and my great-grandmother who was strong for me. I was always being strong for everybody else, and I was always being there for everybody else, but who was actually being strong for me.
But when you finally got on your own at college, that's probably when you had time to you were there for yourself, and you really didn't know what to do.
Exactly. That was the first time I was on my own, and I completely broke down from the inside out.
I think a lot of people do that. I think they're there for other people, and they give so much of themselves to other people, and it kind of helps them cope. But when it comes down to when they have free time or downtime or something like that, that's when it really hits them. If you don't take care of yourself, it makes it really hard to take care of other people. I mean, you can for a limited amount of time, but eventually it gets back to you.
And at that point in time in my life, I couldn't even be alone. I didn't like being alone. If I was alone, it was like this overwhelming feeling of sadness waved over me. And if I was alone for even like an hour, I wanted to be alone for the rest of the day because I was usually crying. Or I was just in this mode of like depression.
In college, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. That's wild. So what did the counselor suggest you do? Like, did she...
One of the reasons that I confronted my father was because she suggested that. She actually suggested going home, and I said, honey, that's not an option. But she suggested that. And then she just suggested getting to know myself. What do you like to do? What do you like to read? What do you like to watch? You know, her thing was, you've committed your whole life to other people. What do you want to do with your own life? What do you like to do? And surprisingly, that took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me. I had to sit down and figure out, Jesse, what do you like?
I think a lot of people, myself included, like come to a point in your life when you're like, you're in a situation your whole life, you go to certain schools maybe, or you've been around a certain type of person, or you've hung out, or you've played a sport and you've only been around one type of people maybe, and it's important to reflect on yourself. Is this really the person who I want to be, or are these my decisions, or am I just kind of going with the flow? Or is this what my mom told me I was supposed to be doing, what I read on a book I was supposed to be like? I mean, I think it's really important, and I think that's good advice. Obviously, you've been through a lot to get you to this point, but I think it's good advice for anyone, whether or not they've been through what you've been through or not, to kind of take a step back and just look at where you've came from, really, because some of your choices and some of the stuff in your past, you didn't really decide yourself. It was kind of thrust upon you, and then I don't know, I think that's really good advice. I think she must have helped you out a lot.
Oh, she definitely, and was so cool. And I called her, I told her, I said, God really sent you into my life, because what is so cool is that when I transferred to Louisville, she actually got a job here at U of L.
Are you serious?
Yes, she works at U of L.
Oh my God.
And I see her around all the time, and I loved it so much because last semester...
That's so cool.
Yes, last semester she saw me. I was on SGA, and, you know, I'm pretty active on campus. And so she saw me and she said, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you. She said, we don't even talk that much now. She said, but I see the difference from that child who was sitting in my office, because when she was working at EKU and she was working on my case, the school wanted to kick me out. The school told her initially to expel me, because they have the Student Rights and Responsibilities Office, and they have a panel who makes a decision, but it all really comes down to that particular counselor's discretion. Yeah. And so she called me in and she said, you know what? The school told me to kick you out, but I'm looking at you, and she was like, I don't think you're a bad child. She said, I think you need some help. And so it's really cool that she got to see the changes and the differences within.
Yeah, that's really neat. I mean, you're lucky. We're not professionals. We say this on every podcast we're on, whether we're talking whatever we're talking about, whether it be drugs, sexual assault, whatever. We're not professionals, but there is help out there, and some of it's free. And if you ever need to reach out to us, I mean, you can always send us a message too. Like I said, we're definitely not professionals, but this is why we're doing it, is to let you know there is help out there, and we can direct you to people who can help you, whether it's through our friend like Avalon at Derby City Consent, JD with Soul Ground, and one of our past people on the podcast. We'll find resources for you if you don't have anyone else and you want to reach out. If you're on campus, though, if you're at a high school, oftentimes there is counselors, there's people there that can help you. And
U of L has amazing counselors. They really do. Yeah. They really do. And if I was anybody out here who's listening, who's going through some things, because college is hard. College is hard. Yeah. So if you're going through things, talk to someone.
Yeah. I think it's important to realize your situation, not that it's unique, but that it happened in two different circumstances, and it kind of built upon
Yes.
one built upon the other, and I think it kind of all came to a head really at once, and it's kind of.
And you know what? My mom and I talk about it all the time because it's good. It happened.
Yeah.
And you know what? I will say this. I did not necessarily care for where I was going to school, but I met some amazing people who took care of me throughout that whole situation. And it was good for me at that point in time in my life to go through that because I had people who I could rely on and fall back on because they really cared about me.
Yeah.
And, you know.
I think that's important too because, I mean, you had a support system. I mean, a lot of times we don't know what people have been through. And, I mean, to be honest, if that same situation had happened to you and you weren't on campus somewhere, you didn't end up at that counselor's office, I mean, that's how people end up on the streets. And a lot of it's for nothing that you did to yourself. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. But that person you're looking out the window, or you might be not making fun of, but looking down upon, they might have a story similar to Jesse's or somebody else's. And they might not have had that support system that was able to catch them when they fell down and able to help them get it back on their feet. So I don't know, that's another thing that I feel strongly about, that we feel strongly about. Basically, you don't know what everyone's been through. Everyone deserves another chance, and oftentimes people act out and do stuff, and not that it's 100% out of their control, but a lot of times it's because of stuff like this has been built up over, I mean, drug use, I mean, all kinds of stuff like that.
You can look at anyone and they could have an amazing story for you. And just looking at the outside, you'll never know. Because a lot of people, I know a couple of my friends, they have visited like my dad's house. And my dad lives in a pretty nice house in a very nice neighborhood. Yeah. And they meet him and they have no clue.
Yep.
They have no clue. You can't tell just by the outside, and that's why you really have to be aware of how you treat people. You really have to be aware of how you talk to people, because you never know. What you say to them could be the last words they hear in their life.
It's so true. And what you said about, I mean, nice houses, nice this, nice that. When it comes down to it, if you're not a good person, it doesn't really matter what you have. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, but our president, not to get political, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy to think about how you measure success and what you have done to get to quotation mark success, and what you've put other people through, and what you've ignored, or
and you know what,
to get to that point.
My great grandmother, she used to tell me all the time. She used to tell me, "Baby boy," because that's my hometown nickname. She'd be like, "Baby boy, be careful how you treat people, because it may not come back on you, but it may come back on someone you love."
That's really good advice. I don't know if that's kind of crazy. I don't know, something about grandmothers and grandfathers seem like their advice is always on point. It's kind of crazy. Speaking of advice, being through the situations, and I hate to divide them into two because it's kind of, as a younger person, that's kind of difficult. But what happened to you when you were older? I guess 13. At that point, obviously, you're not fully an adult or anything like that. But I mean, a lot of us remember what happened when we were 13. Look back on it. What advice would you have looking back on it? Would you give someone like that? Do you have anything that you would?
Well, the first thing I would say is talk to someone, because you can't handle it by yourself. And you're probably sitting there thinking, if you're anything like me, you're sitting there thinking, I can do this, I can handle this, I can put it to the back of my mind, whatever. But I'm telling you, you can't.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody. And the second thing I would have to say is, you either know who you are or you're going to find out who you are. Don't let anybody on the outside shape your opinion of yourself.
I love that. I think that's the biggest takeaway we can take from this, really. I mean, that's cool. I've never really thought about it in terms about that until we started talking. But, I mean, after everything you've been through, after all that, and then you end up with finding yourself and all of this, it's really kind of cool.
And you know, Logan, you don't know this, but you actually helped me with that. I want you to know that. You actually helped me with that. I appreciate it, man. You know, you were the first, I'll never forget coming in here and you asking me to take some pictures for you in BLōFISH things. And I was just thinking to myself, because I've come a long way, but you know, I still have a long way to go. And so I was just thinking to myself,
everybody does.
I am no type of model. And now people, I hear all the time, Jesse, you're a model.
Yeah, it's cool though. I mean, you can tell what you're passionate about. And everybody has a passion for what they are. And not everybody might get to be Tom Cruise, or might not
Right.
get to be Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Donald Trump, even if you look up to him. But at a certain point, I mean, you know who you are, you know what you enjoy, you know your passions, and there's no reason why you shouldn't work to try to get those. You might have to do
Right.
stuff on the side to get there, but at the same
Chase
time,
it.
that's it.
Definitely.
And that's, I don't know, I mean, Jesse just walked in here, and we always, if people are interested in our stuff and they have a like unique look that, and basically you can tell what Jesse exudes BLōFISH. I don't know how to say it, but just talking to him, it's kind of cool to have people like in here, and that's why we get it all the time. People walk in, you want me to model? Yeah, we do. That's what we're here for. We want everybody, all walks of life, everything, to go in. It's cool. We end up meeting people, and they become part of our community, and it's really neat to see people like you stop back in all the time, and I mean, help us out here and there, model for us, stuff like that. It's really cool to keep building this community, because the more people we can get behind this, I mean, we have awesome clothes, blah, blah, blah. Don't get me wrong about that. We put a heck of a lot of work into what we put out as far as fabrics, all that. But what we're here for is really stories like yours, and stories like we talked about before, people who've been through this, who didn't have the safety net, who didn't have that stuff on the background. And basically you have to check yourself at the door sometimes when you're looking at somebody else's perspective. I do it all the time too. You look at someone and you think, why are they like, why don't they do this, or why don't they do that? And a lot of times you have to put yourself in a different perspective and look at that person from their point of view, and really try to understand where they're coming from before you judge someone.
Definitely. And if I can just say one last piece of advice, I guess. I know what you're going through is hard, and I know it sucks, and I know a lot of times you'll sit back and think, why is this happening to me? But don't ever let the world make you a hard person. Don't ever let what you're going through or have gone through make your heart hard, because as much bad things as there is in this world, and as much bad things that are going to happen to, I guess, all of us, there'll be 2 times as good.
You're young, though. That's awesome you have that perspective already. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that, too. The last thing I want to talk about is just a little bit, we've talked a lot about sexual assault, and obviously it's coming in the news right now, and it's really important to me what happened to Jesse when he was younger. I think that's one thing that's not getting talked about a lot right now, and not that everyone who's a survivor of sexual assault has come out, and not that everybody's been brought to justice like they should be, but I think one big, I hate to even divide it into segments or degrees or anything like that, but I think one big part of this story that we're missing right now is family members. And I'll be honest, I think it's huge. Me personally, I know some people who have been through this, and it's a lot easier to say Harvey Weinstein assaulted me. It's a lot harder to come out and say, hey, my uncle did this.
Right.
But the big thing with that is oftentimes they didn't do it to just one person.
Right.
And you keeping that inside of you is really, I know it's hard. I haven't been through that. I can't speak on it at all. But you coming forward and talking about it, even though it's your uncle, even though it's your cousin, even though it's your whoever, aunt, whatever it may be in your family, you coming out and speaking of it might prevent your little cousin, your next door neighbor, your somebody else from having to go through the same thing you did. I think that's a big part of, like I said, part of this story that nobody's talking about right now. And parents, if you're listening to this, or if you're a young person and give this to your parents, be like, hey, listen to this. Parents, please listen to your children when stuff like this happens, because it's you who they look up to. And obviously, I mean, you're a perfect example. I mean, you told your dad and nothing came about it. I know a story of someone not far from here, a friend of a friend, who went through this, and basically she wasn't believed for years and years and years. And it happened to other people around her, other people at the same school, other people in the neighborhood. And like I said, everyone coming forward now, it's amazing. And obviously, if you've been listening to this podcast, we've been talking about it since we started this. It's why we started it. But I think there's another portion of this. Like I said, it's tough, and it's tough because they're your family, it's your blood and all that stuff. Or even if it's someone else really close to you, your teacher, someone like that, and you're hesitant to say it, because oftentimes, I would be willing to say 95 to 99% of the time, they're doing it to other people too.
Oh, definitely. And one thing I'll say too is, if you're a parent and you're listening, pay attention to your child. If all of their life they were a talkative person, and then all of a sudden they're not talking, they don't want to be around each other anymore, if there's a major change within them, something has happened, talk to them. Sit them down and talk with them. And they may not want to talk right then, but let them know you always love them and you always have an open ear. Don't ever shut that door, because I can guarantee you, once you shut that door, it's going to be very hard to open it back up.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end it. Obviously, Jesse's advice earlier was good too. We just want to make sure we get that last part in there because I think really we can stop this problem and help. We already, I mean, not that us as self, but society in general has already made steps towards alleviating this problem, and I think that's a whole nother part that parents and people and close to you can have a place in this also. So, Jesse, thank you for coming in. Hopefully, maybe do it again sometime. What's your Instagram?
Oh, yeah. So, hold on. Let me look it up. It is Jesse, Jesse, _Bailey, BAILEY, 18. So, yeah, follow me, y'all.
If you see Jesse, if you're at U of L, if you're around Louisville and stuff, you can't miss his smile. So, be sure to say what's up and tell him hi. You can always check us out at BLōFISH.com. Our Instagram handle is BLōFISH Clothing, at BLōFISH Clothing. If you want to jump on board, be an ambassador, something like that, feel free to shoot us a DM. Or, like I said, you can always hit us up on Facebook or email us as well. Thanks for listening, as always, and we'll see you later.